Kevin Kauth with Chromaline here. So there's a lot of different emulsions out there, and it can kind of be confusing. What are the different types of emulsions and why you would use one over the other? So I was talking to my friends at Atlas, and they asked that I put together just a quick video here just explaining the different types of emulsions and why someone might use one over the other, a little bit of the pros and cons to each one of those categories. Keep in mind there's diazo-based emulsions, dual-cure emulsions, photopolymer emulsions, and even within photopolymer emulsions, there's a couple different categories: pure photopolymers and hybrid photopolymers. So I'm just going to explain here today what the different types of emulsions are and some of the benefits to each one of those categories. So the first category I want to touch on are diazo-based emulsions. The biggest benefit to diazo-based emulsions is they can be either very, very water resistant or very, very solvent resistant, but they can't be both. Depending on how it's formulated on our end would determine if it's extremely water resistant or extremely solvent resistant. So being a diazo-based emulsion, you do have to mix it and sensitize it. Comes with a bottle of diazo just like this. You take the cap off, fill to the shoulder here with water, put the cap back on, mix that up. You want to let it, be sure that all of that diazo is dissolved into that water, making a perfect solution. I like to use warm water, not hot water. Hot water will damage the diazo, but warm water will help so the diazo dissolves much easier. Pour that into your bucket of emulsion and mix it all up. And then after it's mixed, you're going to want to let it sit for at least an hour before you use it. It's going to go through what's called a degassing process, and there's going to be air bubbles that form in that emulsion and rise to the top. Now, if you were to use that emulsion right away, all of those air bubbles are going to form in your screens, and that's just going to translate to pinholes later on. So be sure you let it sit and degas first. Being that it is an emulsion that needs to be mixed, it's going to have a shelf life. That shelf life before it's mixed is 12 months. After you sensitize that emulsion, you've got 4 to 6 weeks to use it. Now, you want to store that emulsion in climate-controlled areas because if it gets too hot, it can actually damage the emulsion, and you're not even going to get to that 4-week window. If it gets too hot, it might damage in 3 weeks. So keep it in a climate-controlled area. If your screen room is really hot, sometimes it's best to store that bucket of emulsion up in the offices, maybe where there's air conditioning. Another thing about diazo emulsions is they can be affected by humidity. So if you work in a very humid environment, a very humid area of the country, chances are diazo-based emulsions might not be for you, because diazo-based emulsions can definitely be affected by humidity, leading to premature breakdown. Diazo-based emulsions have good edge definition, good mesh bridging. They have a medium exposure latitude. So what that means is the exposure latitude means you can be over the proper exposure point or under that exposure point. And so it is going to be kind of a forgiving emulsion. Not the most forgiving emulsion, but it's going to be a forgiving emulsion. It's suitable for graphics printing, textile printing, basically any form of printing, but just keep in mind the type of inks that you're using. If you're using water-based inks, you're going to want to make sure you're using a water-resistant emulsion. So some of our products I'll go through. CP Tex is by far our most popular diazo-based emulsion. CP Tex is extremely water resistant. So if you're using water-based or discharge inks, CP Tex is an awesome product for you guys. I've had customers do 75,000 impression runs with water-based inks, with CP Tex with 0 breakdown, and they're not using hardeners. But it needs to be properly exposed, and everything needs to be done correctly in your process to achieve perfect screens like that. But CP Tex, very, very water-resistant product. CP2 is on the other side of the spectrum. CP2 is a very, very solvent-resistant product. So if you're using solvent-based inks, CP2 could be a great product for you guys. If you're using water-based inks, CP2 is going to break down pretty fast. But for solvent-based printing, CP2 is an excellent product. And then the other one that I want to touch on is from our ImageMate line. It's our DZ343 emulsion. So DZ343 diazo-based emulsion is a very water-resistant product. So again, water-based printing, discharge printing, DZ343 is an excellent product for you. Another category of emulsions is dual cure emulsions. I'd say the largest benefit to using dual cure emulsions is how forgiving they really are. They're very, very user-friendly. They can be resistant to water-based inks, discharge inks, solvent inks, UV inks, or all of the above, depending on the product. They're very, very user-friendly as far as your exposure latitude. So once again, if you're over that perfect exposure point or under that exposure point, the perfect exposure point, you're still going to have a perfectly exposed stencil because it has a very wide exposure latitude and very forgiving in the exposure process. Dual cure emulsions are not as affected by humidity as something, say, like our CP-Tex or CP2 diazo-based emulsions. It's going to work with under humid conditions a little easier than one of those products. It won't break down as easy under those environments. Dual cure emulsions can resolve extremely fine details. So if you're doing halftone printing, whether it's 4-color process, simulated process, you're trying to resolve very fine, small dots. Dual cures can make that process a little bit easier for you to be able to resolve those extremely fine details. Dual cure emulsions also develop and reclaim, I would say, the easiest out of any of the emulsion categories. During the reclaim process, the emulsion basically just melts off the screen. During developing, even if you're just using a garden hose, when you're developing that emulsion, just basically washes away super, super easy. Because of the user friendliness of dual cure emulsions, I tend to lean towards dual cures for people just getting into this industry. People just getting into this industry, there's a lot to take in, a lot of information. And so using a product that's a little bit more user-friendly is definitely an added bonus. Also, for people just getting into this industry, they probably are coding in not perfect light-safe conditions, whether they're coding screens in the bathroom, basement, wherever. If it's not perfect light-safe conditions, because it's a little bit more user-friendly, slower exposing, you've got more time to work under those not-so-perfect conditions. Obviously, we always recommend working under perfect light-safe conditions, but I know that's not always an option for a lot of people. Also, being the fact that it's a dual cure, it must be sensitized same way as diazo-based emulsions. So you got the bottle of diazo. Once again, fill it up with the water, mix it up, pour it in, mix, let it degas. Before sensitizing, once again, you've got 12 months to use that product. After sensitized, 4 to 6 weeks, same as diazo-based emulsions. So with that, let me get into a few of our most common dual cures. UDC2 is one of our older products. It's been around, it's been tested and tried, and it's a great product. It works with many different types of inks, whether you're using solvent-based inks, UV inks, plastisol, even does a little bit water-based. This is a very, very user-friendly emulsion. And also, you can resolve down to 75 micron lines, which is extremely fine details. So out of all of our products, this is one that can resolve some of the finer details. The only dual cure that we have that can actually resolve finer in our chromoline side is UDC Ace, which can do 50 micron lines, so not much difference. As far as textile printers go, UDC HV is probably our most common dual cure emulsion for textile printers. Just once again, ease of use, exposure latitude, all of those good things. You're going to have those benefits, whether you're using, plastisol inks, if you're using water-based, little bit discharge. Again, usability, fine line details, four-color process, simulated process. UDC HV is an excellent product for you. On our ImageMate side, we've got our DC521. DC521, again, dual cure emulsion. Again, very, very user-friendly. It's going to work with pretty much all types of inks. But this one can't resolve as fine a detail as, say, like the UDC2 or the UDC HV. And that is one of the reasons why it's a little bit lower cost than some of those products. So if you don't need that extreme fine resolution, this is still going to be a very good product for you as well. The most common category of most popular emulsions that we manufacture would be pure photopolymers. Pure photopolymers primarily are just going to be used with plastisol inks only, but they're very fast exposing and high in solids. So just a one-in-one coat is going to give you a really good stencil. So once again, easy to coat your screens, to build up and get a really good stencil. But because it is very fast exposing, you have a much more narrow exposure latitude than, say, our dual cures or diazo-based emulsions. So you have to have your exposures dialed in very close. You can't, it's not so forgiving as far as over or under. Your exposure times need to be right on because they are much faster exposing. With that, if you're working under not so perfect light safe conditions, you're not going to have as much time to work with a pure photopolymer as you would with like a dual cure. They have, so one of the other benefits is it's a one-part emulsion. So you don't have to mix it. You don't have to add sensitizer. Because of that, it has a 24-month shelf life, which is one of its best attributes, is the long shelf life. If you're a shop that you're not going through a gallon of emulsion within that 4 to 6 week window, then I would say something that is much longer of a shelf life, like a pure photopolymer, is going to be a better bet for you. It's suitable for four-color process, simulated process. Once again, it reclaims excellent, develops excellent, but pure photopolymers typically are only going to be designed to work with plastisol inks only. That being said, our most popular pure photopolymer that we have is our Chroma Blue. We've had this out for over a decade now, and it is our most popular emulsion worldwide by far. We make a ton of this stuff and ship it all over the world. It's very user-friendly as far as coating goes, and just ease of use, high in solids, 50% solids, which is pretty much the highest that you can have in an emulsion and still be able to coat properly. But once again, Chroma Blue is just designed for plastisol inks only. One of our newer products, what's been out for just a few years now, is our Chroma Lime. Chroma Lime, pure photopolymer. It's slightly lower in solids than the Chroma Blue is, so a one-in-one coat would give you just a slightly thinner stencil than you would with the Chroma Blue. However, the Chroma Lime is very humidity resistant. So if you have issues when you're exposing your screens and your films are sticking to your screens because of humidity, you won't have that issue with the Chroma Lime. So once again, either the Chroma Blue or Chroma Lime are our most popular pure photopolymer emulsions that we manufacture. The final category I want to touch on is hybrid photopolymer emulsions. Hybrid photopolymer emulsions are more on the newer side in the evolution of manufacturing emulsions. They're going to work very, very similar to pure photopolymers. However, where pure photopolymer emulsions are designed for basically plastisol inks only, hybrid photopolymers will also be resistant to, or can be resistant to, water-based inks, UV inks, solvent-based inks, or all of the above. Whereas, like I said, pure photopolymers are typically designed for plastisol inks only. But you have all the benefits of pure photopolymers with hybrid. You get the fast exposure times. And because of the fast exposure times, you have a much narrower exposure window. So again, your exposure times need to be more precise than you would have to be with a dual cure diazo-based emulsion. You need to be more precise right on your target. Again, you don't need to sensitize hybrid photopolymers, so you have a 2-year shelf life, 24-month shelf life. So that longer shelf life, again, is a huge added benefit for people that aren't going through a ton of product. With that, I will get into a couple that we have. Our Chromatech WR is a hybrid photopolymer, which is designed to work with water-based inks, discharge inks, as well as plastisol inks. But being that it's a hybrid, it has more water resistancy than some of the pure photopolymers that are out there. From the solvent or UV side, we have our DTS Universal or DTS Z1. Either of those products, again, fast exposing, super fine resolution. These are designed for, were originally designed for direct-to-screen systems that are out there, but it doesn't necessarily have to be used with a direct-to-screen system. But the DTS Universal or DTS Z1, either one of those products is going to be resistant to UV inks, solvent-based inks, even water-based inks. So this is a very well-rounded, user-friendly emulsion as far as application goes. Very fast exposing, long shelf life, very, very forgiving process. So dependent on, once again, the types of inks that you're using and your process really determines the type of product that I would recommend.